Walk a mile in my shoes, listen to my blues. I stand before you, resilient, stronger than power, soft as a flower. I know the hour, I am the times. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy.
Hi, good evening, y'all. I am Gwen McKinney, and I'm your host of our Unerased virtual live event. And we're live for an hour. You can catch us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. This is a fun night because we are combining our 2 June podcasts. The first was a subject that is really interesting, and the second is a subject that is close to everyone's heart. I want to just say, folks, please, if you haven't already, subscribe. We will actually be on hiatus. Our podcast will be on hiatus after this month, but there are 32 shows that just cover everything from fibroids to voting, from the economics of aging to reparations and everything in between. So check us out. The topics for this month: Wade in the Weeds, looking at cannabis in the 21st century, and the big beach reads. It's a big wet kiss to our initiative, our budding initiative. She wrote the book celebrating Black women authors, booksellers, and most important, Black women readers. So in just a moment, we'll dive in. But first, another kind of celebration. We have launched another initiative. We love initiatives at Unerased, and it's light and levity. And it starts, we kicked it off with the summer solstice, which was Tuesday, and it's called Our Joy, a sun salute. And it's our digital campaign, Light and Levity, and there's so many trials and triumphs that we face every day. In between, under, and beside it all, we've always had joy. Our joy is the thing that kept our ancestors going, and our joy is the thing that helps us to keep it going. So let me stop talking and just ask you all to look at this pictorial tribute to our joy.
Our joy, it's everywhere we are. Low tech and high touch. A smile, a joke, a belly laugh. Warm sunshine, magical sunsets, rainbows in the storm. A shopping spree, a summer picnic, a girl's getaway, a friend's play date, a poem, a book, a prayer. Quiet space from a clamoring day. A Sunday brunch, a champagne toast, a decadent dessert. Soothing, breathing, stretching, or being still. A fast jig, a long walk, a slow dance. Joy is ours. Joy is us. Let's claim it, then own it.
Wasn't that nice? I just love it. Our stage manager April and Antoinette, the co-creators. They call it our Mercial. I love it. So now let's get this party started. It's just a joy to introduce our guests. Now, the women of the hour. In the interest of full disclosure, the first guest to call up happens to be a sister friend plus. We do share DNA, parents in a lifetime together. But honestly, and I'm not kidding, I'd be singing her praises and having her on our Facebook Live, even if we were not related. Author of 7 novels, she is an exquisite storyteller whose words and characters get into our heart, our mind, and our soul. We're going to talk about her new book, which is coming out in just a week or two, Our Gin, which actually, I'm going to tell you honestly, I devoured it laying on the beach of Grenada a couple of months ago. It was the inspiration for my reading, that got us started on having a big beach read show, which our podcast was devoted to. So whether you're relaxing seaside or just want to be there, take Our Gin with you and let's say hi to Diane.
Hi.
Hey there.
Hi, thank you.
Oh, I'm calling up Marcy Thomas. She can be described with a 6-letter word: badass. She sheds light on bold, brown, and beautiful. Her Brown Girl Book Collective is a coming together in love and unity of Black women, for Black women, about Black women. She started at the height of the pandemic in April 2020 as a vehicle to explore stories for, by, and about Black women. It started out monthly. She's now doing these readings and coming together every week. Go girl, go. Welcome, Marcy.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Finally, certainly not least, and although last, Courtney Richardson. Courtney, she has molded some interesting skills and actually training them into an audacious craft. A lawyer, tax lawyer, by the way, folks, an investment specialist. She's actually a new age woman who helps others become wiser and wealthier. She got insights on how we tap in to what has become a booming cannabis cash cow. And she's going to share some of those insights. And I'm going to hold for a minute because you're just going to say, what does that have to do with Marcy and Diane? And she wrote the books. Well, you'll soon find out. Welcome, wise women.
Hello, thank you.
Oh,
So we've got a lot to talk about. First, I'll start with Diane. Give us a quick synopsis about Our Gin and why this story works as a sublime summer read.
all right. Well, first, Gwen, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this edition of She Wrote the Book. And thank you generally for the whole Unerased initiative. I mean, it's vital to our community. The Gin is also wonderful to be here with Marcy and Courtney. The Gin is my 7th novel set on a 55 plus active living community in a bucolic setting outside of Philadelphia. The main character, Cynthia, has reluctantly moved there at the urging of her son, and she quickly strikes up friendships with the 3 other people of color. They commune often. They get together at one or the other townhouse. They smoke weed. They drink wine. They line dance. They watch movies from the blaxploitation area. I mean, they just have a good time. But beneath the fun and froth, storms brew as their pasts are just nudging to come to the fore. These secrets that they've kept suppressed for decades now just want to flourish in this new soft soil. So the novel goes back and forth between the retirement village and the Philadelphia areas of Philadelphia where many of them were raised, and things happen. I can't hear you.
I tell everyone to mute. I muted. I was going to say we have 3 people who have Philadelphia roots, including you, and your stories are actually always based in and around Philly. Why so?
Because I know Philly. I need to start. Usually when I start writing, I don't know much about the story. I don't know the plot, as it were. I don't know where the characters will take me. So I have to start with what I do know. And I do know Philadelphia. I mean, I know it intimately. And it is such a rich place to set a story because it's filled with so many contraries. You know, it's a lot of wealth in Philly, a lot of poverty, education center, but you know, a lot of people who are just like trying to make it. It proposes to be a world-class city, but it can have a real provincial feel within the neighborhoods. So I just love setting my books in Philly because I can play on and play up all of those contraries.
So moving to Marcy, I understand that you're going to be featuring Diane, the Brown Girl Book Collective is going to have her in a reading. So I want you to talk a little bit about, for our viewers, what happens in the book club. Now, a lot of folks are in book clubs, but some people are not. Tell us what that process is. And for instance, as you feature Diane, what's going to happen?
Well, once again, thank you for having me. And here's my copy here. I get to read it before everybody else. So I'm excited. Well, not you, Gwen, but everybody else. But basically, the book club is not like the BGC book club is not like your traditional book club. It started out that way, as I mentioned, during the pandemic. But I realized that I know a whole lot of writers. And I'm like, what better way to actually have writers come into the space and talk to us about their books? So, you know, a lot of times people may be watching or listening in because it is done live in a similar format to what you're doing here on Facebook and on YouTube. It streams live and authors come in and I just ask them questions about the story, about their process, you know, major themes in the book. You know, we don't give away spoilers for those who may not have had a chance to read it yet, but it is an opportunity for folks to be introduced to Black women writers. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I've only interviewed Black women writers, with the exception of one man who wrote a poetry book celebrating Black women. So when I say Black women, I mean Black women. And, you know, it started as a monthly thing, but in the last couple of years, I was quickly able to turn it into a weekly thing because there are just that many Black women currently in the space of writing across genres, whether it's historical fiction or, you know, mystery or romance or whatever the case may be. So it's not your traditional where you get in and somebody picks a book and everybody reads it and discusses it, but it is a platform for authors to be able to tell their stories in their own way.
So what do? You post like the week or the month before? How do your club members know what they're coming to read or discuss or what?
Well, I do post in advance. I always post in advance of the book club, the people who are going to be on. Like for instance, next week we'll be reading Good Morning Love. Well, actually, wrong. Too many books. It'll be on rotation next week. This will be 2 weeks later. But yes, so that will go up and I'll tag the author so that they can share with their audiences and things like that. So people know who's going to be on. So if it's an author that they're interested in, or maybe a book they've heard of, I give a synopsis of the book, all of those things. So no one who watches comes into it blind. And the advantage of it being in an open format is that anyone can watch it anytime, because sometimes people can't come on live. But once it's recorded, it stays on either the Facebook platform or the YouTube platform. So somebody might discover the book 6 months from now or 6 years from now because it's there. But anyone who's looking for Black women writers and books by Black women writers will be able to find them.
Excellent. And so if somebody wants to join or become a member, we're going to make sure we give them information. I think April has all your information. People can log on to your to either your Facebook page to join. Is that right?
That is correct. There is an actual BGC Book Club group on Facebook, so you can join that. If you just go to the Brown Girl Collective Facebook page, there is a space to actually join the group, and I do put extra little things inside the actual group that group members can see.
And you can also do it from the web too, because I saw it there.
Right. So there are many different ways.
Yeah, excellent. So now this plot is getting ready to thicken, folks, because Courtney doesn't have a book club. She's not a publisher or a bookseller, and she's not an author. But and we're going to talk a little bit more about it. I want Diane and Marcy to get into this too. I mentioned that she's an investment specialist, and our show is titled Smoking Hot. There was a reason for that. You like that cute title? Smoking Hot? We're not just talking about the beach read. We're talking about the issue of marijuana. Some call it cannabis, some call it joint, weed, pot, ganja, whatever, in the 21st century. And check out our podcast show, Wade in the Weeds, if you haven't. But Courtney, you're a lawyer, you're a financial whiz, and you're helping women in particular become savvy investors, and you dive right into the cannabis industry as a commodity that's good for money. Tell us about that.
So there's so much to talk about with when we're talking about the cannabis industry, but I think interesting enough to talk about it in the context of the book, just to hear that there are women who have lived through the idea of prohibition of cannabis and now have been able to sit amongst each other freely without stigma to sit down over wine and discuss. I think that is kind of ultimately what cannabis is right now. It's that stigma, for the most part, has been taken away. I mean, we have in the United States, we have 50 states. I think about 34, 35 of them have some sort of legalized cannabis consumption, whether it's marijuana, and we've moved from the term recreational to adult use. And so we're saying, okay, so either it's for medicinal purposes. So in Pennsylvania, you can get it for medicinal purposes. They're working on what we call an adult use bill. And then, in other places like DC, I was just at the National Cannabis Convention, or I should say festival, and it was just kind of everywhere like it was 1969 again.
Like Woodstock, huh?
Exactly. But again, the faces have changed. I think at one point it was the enjoyment of kind of those who are raging against the system, but now it's looked at to be part of the culture, part of the conversation. So in terms of how people can get involved, there's so many places for people to get in where they fit in. But more specifically, I think it's really important for Black women to understand the industry, because up until relatively recently, we were specifically targeted, and I should say Black people generally, but Black women were targeted as part of the way to the rage against the war on drugs that started, in 1970. So we've been running this game for over 50 years now. And again, to see it nicely change for everyone, it's kind of like, well, what's next? How do I get in? Where do I fit in?
So where do we? I mean, so there's dispensaries. There's the edibles. There's the medical side. Where is? I'm just going to ask this question about where's the investment point of entry for people if there is an investment opportunity.
So there are a couple of we'll say, so when we're looking at cannabis, just to step back a second, you have consumers and we
Mhm.
have producers. So when we're consuming, we're enjoying our edibles, we're enjoying whatever we're deciding to smoke on or whatever. So you have that. But then on the other side, you have the producers, which kind of that's where you can get into the investment side.
That's the money, right?
Right, that's the money. So you have companies that are what we call multi-state operators. So here's the thing, and I want to clear this up. Cannabis is still illegal on the federal level. So the
Mhm,
CSA, what we call the Controlled Substances Act
mhm,
of 1970, which was passed
mhm,
by President Nixon to get at the hippies and the black people, which is very clear. They've
mhm.
made that very clear. Um, so it's still illegal. So the question is, well, how do I get into this industry that's still technically illegal on the federal side? Well, you have on the state side, in terms of the Commonwealth or other states, you have the opportunity to get involved with a dispensary. You may want to be a producer in terms of a farmer. I mean, we're doing a lot more urban farming, which I think is super cool. But then on the other side, you have the opportunity to get involved in the stock market. Now, the stock market, we all know the stock market has gone haywire
Oh yeah.
over the last couple of weeks. And I should probably even say last couple of months because we're thinking, hey, we're getting into a recession. And so I want to say the first places that we start seeing weakness and kind of like really rocky roads are going to be in the newer industry or the smaller industries. And cannabis, as much as we know it to be a kind of a day to day or a little bit more functional than we used to think of it, it's still very small. It's still very new. So you have Canadian companies that are traded in the United States as regular state, like just like a Walmart would be. But then you have these other companies that are in the United States, but they have to be traded in Canada because guess what? It's still illegal overall.
Mm.
And so that's kind of places where you can get involved. You would do it in a brokerage account, which is basically think of it as a checking account for your stocks.
Oh,
So those are the opportunities. So getting in on the retail side of it or kind of the production side, you can also invest in terms of what we would say on the stock market, but then we have ancillary things. There's a couple of like cannabis tourism groups. So there's so many different things. You can find whatever you love to do. You can find something to do with that love in the cannabis industries if you so choose. So I kind
mm.
of want to make that clear.
Other than getting high,
Other
you
than
can.
being high.
So Diane, you figured marijuana into your storyline. It's maybe it's not the prominent element, but it's in there and it's part of the character's social scene. And I hear Courtney saying, well, it's not recreational, but these adults were recreating around joints. What made you kind of weave that into the story? Because you didn't have to, but you
No,
decided to.
no, no, no. Actually, the people on on this retirement village actually revert to lives of youthful indulgence, and they become, they're in this new place. Some of them have kind of been pushed there by their adult offspring, and so they become, almost like they're moving into a campus, a dorm, and they take that on. And as I was writing the book, just thinking about, my
So it's like a
experience.
second youth, huh?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. They revert. They go back. Like, these are some of the things I did to enjoy myself. I mean, the one character who hasn't smoked in since undergraduate school, and when she's offered a joint, she's thinking back to the time when she was in school in this Ivy League setting, and just the toil of every day, this, riding this white wave of privilege that was all around her. And she come back to her dorm, and they had like pieced out their little money from their work study checks, to buy a dime bag, and roll these joints. And she would take the first hit of the joint and would be like, ah, everything's gonna be okay. So just the relief.
I
And she is like really feeling a longing for the house that she left, that she loved, this character Cynthia that she lived in for 30 years and is now in this retirement village. And then she takes that first puff of joint and it's like, it's going to be okay. So in that sense, it's like this kind of full circle coming, going from where she was 4 decades ago to now, feeling in a similar way, similar kind of, new place, new life, can I do this? And she smokes and just, some of the tension falls away. And this is what they do when they get together. Like
They smoke and they have fun and they
have a good
and
time. They're like in their 60s and living their best lives.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I love the vibrancy. I have to ask you, Marcy. Marcy is a book woman. Do you have any books that or authors who basically address the issue of Black folks in the war on drugs? Because Courtney mentioned it, and that figures prominently when we're talking about cannabis, which some say is the entry level into drug addiction or whatever. But from a criminal injustice standpoint, it is the entry level to criminalizing young Black folks in general. But tell us, are there any books or stories that you're familiar with that address, and it could be nonfiction, because you do fiction and nonfiction.
Right. Be honest, personally, I have not run across any at this point, but I am sure, because one of the things, as I mentioned, in us reading a lot of different books, when I get more into memoirs and personal narratives, sometimes that's just a part of people's stories. So, but I'll definitely continue to, look for them and reach out and let you know if I run across any specifically that talk about that.
Courtney might know authors who have, I'm sure you've addressed issues that have to do with the war on drugs, which shows the contradictions of who's making the money now and on whose back have they built that.
Yeah, there's a book. It's written by an attorney. It's called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander.
Of course. Of course, Michelle. Yes, and she deals with the whole systemic, which is much broader than simply the drug use itself. It's dealing with all of that. Well,
I was just going to say, I'm just glad that Courtney has laid out all of the avenues for Black women to now, as it is, like capitalize on the whole industry, because like some of us have been like lived in terror of our sons and daughters being stopped and frisked and their whole lives upended, for having a trace amount of marijuana. And it's been enraging to me. I did a piece several years ago for a Philadelphia magazine where it's enraging to see. I remember John Boehner, who's now involved in this whole, like making a lot of money on marijuana in the production end, and that someone who in the Congress, I'll never change my mind on it. It should stay illegal, and like now is capitalizing on it, and that just like that it's enraging that these people who have on the backs of young Black people like upended their lives now like getting paid. It's just
they are capitalizing off of it. Well, to shift, because I was asking about the book titles. We are talking about a big beach read, and we're going to come back to that. I want to ask you all, what are you reading? Now, I know Marcy, you can see in the background her gazillion books. What are you reading? Courtney, what are you reading now? What are you reading, Marcy? What are you reading? All right. Cashing out. Okay. Of course you will be. Of course. Yes. All right. You show us that. What about you, Diane?
I'm reading, actually, my sister returned a stack of books, and I guess I read like years ago, Third Girl from the Left, and she was talking about aspects of the book she loved and was like, I have to reread that. So I am actually I'm going to do some rereading this summer. Also, Sheila Williams, the Secret Women, which is a little newer, and Black Cake debut by Charmaine Wilkerson. And it goes back and forth from the Caribbean to London to California. So,
wow. And you all can see behind me, I am finishing up Viola Davis. And this is a hey, shout out to one of our sister circles, Tina. Here we go. And this was a pandemic book, a wonderful anthology. Well, Team Unerase, in addition to Tina McElroy Ansa, Team Unerase released our big beach read list this month. And there's our sister friend from our sister circle. And actually, for our virtual audience, if you want to, you can show it again, April. There you go. Here are some of our dear sisters who gave us their list. Guess what? You can get it, but you got to subscribe to the newsletter. And these are some of them. And it's a wonderful resource. If for people who, I often ask Diane, what should I get? What should I read? You can get the list there. It's the Big Beach Read. And I want to do a shout out to some of our sisters who just flashed up. If you're listening, if you're viewing, if you're here with us, I mean, whether it's Alelia or Sonia or Tina, just shout out and send us a little note about what's next on your list, because they gave us a wonderful list and all they have to do is put it in the comments. I'm not good with that. They say, Gwen, ask people to put in the comments. But you can go to Unerase Summer Reads from our newsletter. No, it's online. Hi, Amelia. We got your list. We love it. Thank you very much, dear. And I know Sonia's out there somewhere. But go to unerasebws.com to subscribe to our newsletter and to get these wonderful things. Back to our stage. Ladies, I want you to be thinking about what makes a beach read, or a summer read, whether you're at the beach or not, but summer. And I'd like, what do you think? I'll start with you. Of course, kind of will end with Marcy, because she's got the gazillion. We'll start with you. What, Courtney, makes a summer read what you're getting from it? This is a light and lively question.
I think it has to give me the vibe that I can just sit over, and watch the sunset and drink some Moscato. Don't judge me. And just kind of enjoy just reading and soaking it in, and just like watching the sun go down, like just really turning down and relaxing. So something relaxing, something, that kind of makes you go, oh, wait a second, let me read that again. And just gets you excited about it. And just gives me, kind of harkens back in terms of being a reader to like when I was in my teenage years, and kind of just that fun feeling, but in a book. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for with my summer reads.
I see. Diane, what is a summer read? Well, you're doing summer rights. You're finished?
Summer rights for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to be transported. I mean, I want to be taken out of my daily routine, like the everyday stuff, and go somewhere. And so I want to be transported, and however that happens, I want a lot of atmosphere in the book. I want to see, hear, feel, taste, smell. I want to follow along with the story. And I just want to be taken away from like my everyday life, and like just taken to someplace where I have never been, or if I've been there before, to have a new perspective about it.
And what about Marcy? What about you? What does a summer read mean to you?
Ditto what the other lady said, but also just something that just makes me, inspires me, so to speak, because a lot of times when we're living in our day to day, we have our set way of doing things, our set schedules and stuff like that. But to read something that I can escape and then also be inspired to say, hey, maybe I could be a crime fighter. Maybe I can go off and get involved in this great summer romance. I could do that too. So I like to be inspired by the things that I read. And because I focus on Black women and Black heroines specifically, just to see powerful Black women that are written in ways that encourage me to be all that I can be as well.
Well, we have a little clip from our podcast, and of course he would know, the publisher of Amistad, of the Amistad collection. No, one of the editors. I'm sorry, I gave him a promotion, didn't I? Patrick Henry Bass.
Could be prophetic, yeah.
Formerly the book editor with Essence, who breathes and oozes books from his skin. Let's hear what he has to say. What is a summer read?
My name is Patrick Henry Bass. I am an executive editor at Amistad, which is a part of HarperCollins Publishers. In the publishing industry, a summer read are often fiction, and they're often escapist books. So the long tradition of beach reads, which really developed around the late 1960s, early 1970s, were novels by Sidney Sheldon and Hal Robbins that introduced readers into the jet set, to worlds unlike anything that, a Midwestern school teacher had ever experienced. And so through these characters who traveled from Milan to Paris to Australia on private jets and caviar, it gave them not only relief from their own day-to-day lives, but it also gave them a sense to sort of peek behind the curtain, if you will, of the wealthy and the powerful.
Really interesting. I appreciated that. And I think that for our audience, should ask you, if anyone wants to post, what are you reading now? We'd like to hear. We want to get folks in the mix of things. And a lot of times, I think if you're not on Facebook, and a lot of people are going to YouTube, they can't really do it. So that's the challenge there. But back to our studio, back to our guests. I think that our Jen, which really is an interesting story about aging. And it's something that, if we're lucky, we all will be traveling there. And Diane mentioned that her characters had very vibrant lives, but because she kept going back and forth, we don't want to tell too much, no spoiler alert, but because you travel to the present and future, it's an interesting, interesting transitions and transporting back and forth. How do you assure that as you're doing that, you're going to keep your readers? This is for you, Diane, and then I think Marcy has already started reading the book, so maybe she might have a question. How do you keep them engaged in that? Because it's a lot of shifting going on.
I think the act of shifting can, in and of itself, be engaging, and to have almost like two stories going at once. There's the story that's happening in the present, and then there's the story that's happening 20 years later, and they both have their conflict. They both have their sense of drama. I mean, the characters are acting in all kinds of ways that move the story along, both in the past and the present. And for me, that's kind of how we live. I mean, we live here in the current, and like the next second we're 5 days ago, the next second we're 20 years ago, then we're back to where we are right now today. And so I think in some ways it approximates just our experience as human beings, like the memory and the perspective and the things that emerge as we are, doing what we're doing, that can sometimes be shocking. The characters in Our Gen are they're trying to really just repress some of the memories that they don't want to come to the fore. But the memories are going to have their day and have their say. And so then that also, for me, moves the story along. Like, what happened to them? Oh my goodness, what will happen to them 20 years ago? But look what's happening to them now. And so I play off of those. Juxtapositions.
Marcy, what are your thoughts? Because I guess you started Our Gen, didn't you?
Yes, I have read the first few pages, and I'll just say, woo. But one of the things that I love about the way that Diane is writing, in other authors that use similar devices, is that to me it makes for a richer character. Because a lot of times you just get thrown into a story and things are happening and you have no idea who this person is, or no idea how they got to this point, or why they're doing the things that they're doing, because you're just operating in that moment that's captured in that story. But by having the flashbacks and, having them think back, it just, for me, it helps me, enjoy, or at least even if I don't like the character, I can understand them better because they look more like a whole person.
And I think in a novel, that's a genre that allows for that. Courtney, who is a lawyer, I would assume a lot of the things you read are nonfiction. Is that true or no?
No, that's true.
I figured. I guessed it. She's got that nonfiction look about her. So what is it? I often wonder what attracts people to the genres. I'm starting to more and more like memoirs now. But what is it about the nonfiction? Is it because you're looking for something to fill in the gaps to know, or what? What drives you to nonfiction?
It depends. It's usually focused on something or some reason that something I'm looking for, or something that kind of catches my eye, something that's a paradigm shift. Like, for example, there's a book called like the 12-week year. You're like, well, wait a second, a year is 52 weeks. So tell me more about this idea that you have. So you want to hear about that, but also to your point, I actually recently read Will Smith's book, I guess like last year. And so I just saw the cover and I thought it was pretty. And because I do so much like thought, like when I'm reading, that I wanted something that I didn't have to think about. Now, interesting enough, he wrote a chapter about his father passing, and kind of about death and dying. And it was right as my mother was transitioning. So it was very helpful to listen to somebody kind of walk through the transition and kind of use some of the tools that they learned during that transition to kind of inform my helping, myself kind of in my head transition. So sometimes I'm looking for something else and then I find, but I think that's always a treasure of a book. You find something else. I go there for something and I'm like, oh, it's kind of like Target, but in pages. So
yeah, that's an interesting thing. And how do you choose, for instance, you, Marcy, because you're doing a book a week?
Yes.
Whoa.
Sometimes too.
How do you choose?
Well, and because I center in Black women writers, that's always, the first thought. Some of it is just like you were talking about genres. I have found that I love historical fiction. And I've fallen in love with historical fiction because it's kind of like the merger of what Courtney is talking about. I'm learning something, especially if it's something taking place and, something I don't know about history. I'm learning, but then I'm also learning through story. But, I choose for that when I'm reading, and it's not necessarily for the book club. I do like memoir. I do also enjoy nonfiction. So when you see the stuff that's behind me, it's a hodgepodge. It just really depends. some romance every now and again. Mystery is something new that I never really read a lot of mystery before, but now that I see more Black women writers getting into mystery. I like reading those as well. So it's just a lot of it's just, it's a cover that captures my view, and I read the short synopsis, and and then I'm off from there.
Diane, I have to ask you, you have seven children. Do you have a favorite child?
You know what? If I did, I couldn't say. They all are favorite. Tumbling is my favorite because it was the first. Tempest Rising is my favorite because it was the book I didn't think I could write, because I had to struggle through the fear of being a one book wonder. And I had a deadline now with the second, and an audience, and an advance I'd already spent. And so I had to work really hard for the second. Blues Dancing takes place on a college campus, and heroin addiction, and that was that's my favorite because I learned so much, not only about the characters but about myself. It was really a journey of discovery about me. Leaving Cecil Street is my favorite because it takes place on this this little West Philly block, and I just love to write about West Philly because that's where I was born and raised. And it's so they all are. Lazaretto is my favorite because it's very historical, and it takes place in.
You've got 7 favorites.
Yes, and now Our Gin is my favorite because it's very different for me. I mean, I was writing parts of Our Gin during the pandemic, and I was trying to lighten it up, and it got saucy, and it was like there were points when I was writing and said, "Can I do this?" And it's like, "Oh, what the hell? I'm doing it." And so I just okay, this is it. This is the book. This is what I'm writing. So that's my favorite for that.
One of our commenters said, you did just like a good parent. Don't admit it, even if there is a favorite. And that makes a lot of sense. So I have a question that I'm throwing out there to all of you. Each of you got, and it's not just about the books, but it's what's your summer looking like? Because we're coming into summer. And it could be, you could take the easy way out and say, I'm gonna read, I'm gonna go to the beach, but no. So we'll start with you, Courtney. What does your summer look like? Summer is supposed to be a period of, just relaxing on some level, easing the lazy days. What's your time looking like? None of that. None of that.
None of that. So I have 3 teenage, or 1 preteen and 2 teenage stepchildren that are coming in the next couple of days.
Wow.
So camp. The 2 older ones are working, so we'll be doing that. I think we may take a jaunt to the beach. My aunt is turning 80, and so we're planning her 80th birthday party. So we're gonna, as much as lightness I would love to have, I can't really say that it's gonna be too light. But I did just get back from Hawaii, so that was a week of just light, light. So
okay, what's your summer looking like, Marcy?
Well, I know you said the easy way out is reading. When I'm not reading, I will be getting outside and getting as much fresh air and walking as much as I can. I'm a part of Girl Trek. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Girl Trek. Yes, I am a part of Girl Trek, and I will be trekking as much as I can, getting ready for our stress protest, which will be in Colorado on Labor Day weekend. So I'll be spending a lot of time doing that. And as I mentioned to you all earlier, I live outside of Hotlanta. This is only my 2nd summer in Hotlanta, so I'm going to see what kind of trouble I can get into since outside is open again.
What about your summer, Diane?
Since Our Gin will be coming out in July, I will be doing activities surrounding the book, the promotion of the book, a lot of it virtual, but going some places as well. And so that's, it calls on a different part of me because the writing is very solitary. that I love, and I can, it's me and to myself, and I can do it in my own time. And then the actual promotion is everything is externalized. And so I have to call on this other part of me to put myself out there, to put the book out there. So my summer will be consumed with some of that, but also, time with family and grandchildren, and,
So just
the
chilling.
beach house, hint, hint, Gwen. And yes. Mhm.
So now, from the pleasure to the not work, but so I want you all to tell our audience what's coming up in your work and how they can connect with you, because we want to do a little bit of promotion for you. So we'll start with you, Courtney, and I believe, tell us how folks can get in touch with you, etc.
So, unfortunately, I'm actually going through a brand transition, but you can always catch me on Instagram as the Ivy Investor. You can catch me on Twitter as the Ivy Investor, also on Facebook as the Ivy Investor.
He's an AKA, you guys. Ivy, right? Okay.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I can be found on all social media platforms. And like I said, we're going through a transition, so that will be popping up at some time, hopefully in the next month or so. So that's part of my summer plans. But yeah, I mean, I'm just really looking forward to have conversations. I'm really looking forward to getting into Arjen, because I am all for it. I'm like, I'm ready to read in my July steamy nights, just to kind of chill out in the sunroom and read. So
Uh-huh. So Marcy, what's up with the Brown Girl Collective?
Well, we'll be continuing to do book club every week, by and large, for the rest of the summer. That's on Monday evenings at 8:00 p.m., hosted live on the Brown Girl Collective Facebook channel and YouTube channel as well. And then on Thursdays, actually, I'll be doing very shortly, I host something called Live Well, Sister, which is more dedicated to ways in just that we can live well, whether it's in our careers or our health, or, just a lot of different ways, because many times as Black women, we find that we might be successful in one area or the other area, but we may struggle in other places. So this is all about us learning how to live well on a wider range of areas of life. So I'll be doing that on Mondays and Thursdays, and you can find me on Instagram at Brown Girl Collective, also on Facebook at Brown Girl Collective.
And Diane, if people want to get in touch with you or to book a reading or speaking or something like, how do they get?
They can contact Ashley Yepsley at HarperCollins at harpercollins.com. My Twitter is at Diane MCKWH. Website, can contact me there. Diane McKinney-Whetstone.com. And and I'm looking forward to being on Marcy's platform in July.
Yes, July 25th.
That's right. I got it down. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. The time goes fast, doesn't it?
It sure does.
It goes fast.
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank you, all three of you, for coming into our space and joining us. Audience, I kept talking about our podcast. We're going to close out with a little commercial of our podcast, and then wrap it up, take you home with our unerased theme song. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I want to wish everyone a wonderful summer, and a summer that's filled with joy. And while we are filling it with joy, there also needs to be some hope in there too. Mm-hmm. So thank you all, and hope to see you again.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Mm-hmm.
Black women are fully present in all meaningful aspects of our daily lives. Yet too often we are left out of the conversation when mainstream media seeks to tell our stories. That is why we decided to launch Unerased Black Women Speak, a podcast series dedicated to elevating our voices and celebrating our accomplishments. Subscribe today to Unerased Black Women Speak, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and online at unerased.bws.com.
It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. My shoes, listen to my blues. I stand before you, resilient, stronger than power, soft as a flower. I know the hour, I am the times. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. Appreciation, I need to know you know who I am and what I've achieved. Honor my journey, you could learn from me. Where there's a ruse, I speak the truth. I'm looking at you with respect and appreciation. I want for you the very best in all situations. When we get together, I feel so alive. No lie. Oh, we don't put up with no way. Yeah, we are done risking our necks. We deserve all the love that we desire. That's by design. It is the strength for me. It's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood.